Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of the Bay Street Capital Holdings podcast titled How'd You Do It and Why Should I Care? This series aims to highlight women doing amazing work in various industries. So today we are so lucky to be joined by Claire Melehani, who is attorney at Gates Eisenhart Dawson. Hi Claire, lovely to have you on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So I guess we could start off with an introduction. If you'd like to introduce yourself and also answer the question of the podcast. I know it's a big one, but how'd you do it and why should I care?
Sure. Well, I am an attorney at Gates Eisenhart Dawson. We're in the Silicon Valley area of California, and we handle complex civil litigation for high-powered executives and entrepreneurs. I guess why you should care is I'd love to give other advice to other women who are aspiring into entering male-dominated industries and how they can succeed and pivot when necessary.
Awesome. So what inspired you to become a lawyer? Was it one specific point in your life? Was it a collection of experiences?
Yeah, so when I was young, my parents went through a very contentious divorce in Indiana. And so I ended up being exposed to the work and the end results that come from bad lawyering. And when lawyers aren't necessarily guiding their clients in a way that's best for their long-term interest and more focused on the short term. So as I matured, seeing that, I thought, well, certainly I could do better. And so in the back of my mind, I always thought being a lawyer would be really interesting. But there's also a perception in families that have gone through experiences with bad lawyers that all lawyers are bad. And so if you enter an industry like that, then you're sort of sinking to that level. And so I was fighting against that. And so ultimately gave into this idea that, I'm going to see if I can chart a different path for myself as a lawyer into being a high quality lawyer who cares about the long-term consequences for her clients. And it's been an amazing experience. I'm really glad I took the plunge.
Awesome. So what helped you take the plunge? What were the best resources that helped you become a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, I actually decided to try to force myself down a different path. And I think trying to force myself into an industry that didn't quite fit my personality helped me take that plunge. And then as far as resources go, really just mentorship. Not being afraid to reach out when you see someone who has a career that you think would be a great fit for you and asking them, really doing exactly what this podcast is intended for. How did you get here and how can I follow in your footsteps?
Awesome. So it seems like you spoke to a lot of people and had like an extensive network as well, you asked. But were there any lessons that you wish you would have known before starting in the lawyer industry?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that to succeed in a male-dominated industry, a lot of people think you need to fit the mold of what all of the men are doing. Being bombastic, really arguing as a lawyer and slamming your fist on the table as like people do on television. And I think I wish I could have told my younger self, you don't have to fit that mold. You can chart your own path, and that can actually help you stand out and even obtain better results than that more bombastic style does.
Very important lesson to learn as well. And what would you say across the span of your career was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so I would say my biggest failure was in my career before going into law, trying to fit myself into that mold of, what everybody says is going to be a great job that you should take, even if it doesn't really fulfill your heart's desire and your passion, if it doesn't get you excited to go into work in the morning. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I just am not enjoying it because I'm not good enough at it yet. If I just keep my head down and keep hustling and grinding, I'll wake up one day and just love investment banking. And while I love numbers and math and doing that type of work for my clients as part of their cases, I didn't find it alone intellectually stimulating enough because you don't get to work with other people often. And so really just knowing yourself, and I think not knowing myself early on and not being confident in my inner voice was my biggest failure.
And I'm glad you came to that realization by yourself as well, because I feel like that would reinforce it even more.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what would you say is a piece of advice then for anybody who is wanting to pursue a career in the law industry?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is just be very organized. If you're not an organized person, practicing law will be extremely difficult because it's very deadline driven. So if you're a good student and you're able to manage all your coursework, all the different deadlines, you don't turn in things late, I would say that's a good indication that you'd be good at the organizational aspects of being a lawyer. If you're a document hoarder and a paper hoarder, I would say that's an indication that you probably aren't going to set yourself up for success, because you have to be able to find things quickly, know everything is, because you need to be able to have it at the ready in trial, or for producing documents in discovery. And the other advice I would give is just read and write every day. If you love reading and writing, a career in law would be great for you. And it's just a skill that you continue to hone over your lifetime.
Awesome. Well, speaking about reading and writing, actually, what is one thing that you've read or listened to recently that's really inspired you?
Oh, I meant to grab it before, but it's this book right here. It's called The Rejection That Changed My Life, and it is an amazing book. I really suggest it for anybody who's going through a difficult career transition right now, or anticipating making a career transition, because if you're taking a risk, it's not going to go perfectly the entire time. You're going to come up against some challenges. And this book has a lot of really great advice from women who've succeeded on how those rejections, they were able to take those and learn something important from a failure and spin it into a positive that changed their whole careers.
Super inspiring.
Yeah.
And following on from that, who are 3 people in your life who've been the most influential to you?
My first is my husband, which is a cliche answer, but we've been together since I was 22. And in retrospect, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so young back then. But he's just always there for me. And his confidence and self-assurance is sort of rubbed off on me. I think as women, we have a tendency to always feel like we're not doing enough. Society expects a lot of us. And so it's difficult not to internalize that. And so watching him and his confidence as he goes about networking and, just navigating different workplace issues has been really positive for my own career as well. The second's my grandmother. She never worked outside the home. She got married at 18. And so talking to her later on in her life and learning about how she wishes, she would have done more outside the home is just something that I've realized is, it's really important to find purpose, not just in your work, but also in your family and vice versa. And the third, I couldn't limit my third one to just one of my 3 colleagues here. They've been so amazing. Yesterday was my 1-year anniversary with this firm. And
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, I just love it here. And they all are really great at mentoring me in different ways. So, there's Stephen McClellan, Mark Eisenhart, and Jim Dawson, and they are just extremely patient and very, very into empowering their female employees to grow into bigger and better roles within the firm.
That's so lovely. And such a lovely, narrative that you have such a nice workplace as well to work at. Makes you excited to go to work every day.
It really, really does. Sometimes I take the work home on the weekends, and I love my clients, so it works out nicely.
For sure.
Especially with having a husband who's also a workaholic.
Yeah, no, it speaks volumes if you're willing to work on weekends, I think, Awesome. And then finally, to wrap up our conversation, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself at any point in your life?
I would say it's important to talk to yourself in a positive manner. I think it's so easy to preface questions by, oh, I'm so sorry to bother you, or, oh, this might be a dumb question, but, and if you do that too much, you start to really internalize it. And I would say just talk to yourself the way you would your 5-year-old self, or, for any listeners who have children, talk to yourself the way you would your child. Would you want your child to start a question with, so this is a dumb question, but, and if you start to change those behaviors over time, your confidence will really grow.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that wonderful piece of advice. And that wraps up our conversation today. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Claire.
Oh, gosh, it's my pleasure. Happy to.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.